Hello, Jerry. I'm Emily Liska, and this is a project with the Jacksonville Historical Society, and our project is called The Melting Pot, The Diverse Cultures of Northeast Florida, and it's funded in part by the Florida Department of Cultural Affairs. So we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to go through North Florida, particularly Jacksonville, and meet with residents as yourself to learn your story and how you ended up here in North Florida. And so I welcome you today, and I thank you for telling us your story.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll let you start. Go right ahead. You are, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to let you repeat it later after me, so it's right. You're Jerry Nackashi.
That's correct. Jerry Nackashi.
And go ahead and tell us about your country of birth and whatever you would like to tell.
Well, I was born in Iraq, in Kirkuk, Iraq, and born at home. You know, they didn't go to hospitals back then, so I was born at home. I remember how we played. We didn't have television. When we came here, I was introduced to TV.
And you were about?
I was 13.
About 13, but
yeah.
So this is back at home.
Yeah.
What was your home like? Do you remember the house physically?
Yeah, the house is made of concrete or block, and it's open. Air conditioning wasn't available. You just had a block of ice that a fan blew and to keep the house cool.
A fairly hot climate.
It's a hot climate, but it's dry. Everybody comes home at noon because it gets so hot that the asphalt usually bubbles, you know. So everybody comes home from school and everything. It takes like a 2-hour break, and then they go back to work or school or whatever. And, you know, life was easy. You know, kids played marbles and, you know, just tag and kickball, things like that. Soccer. Soccer was big in Iraq. That's the sport. Then my father was a carpenter, but a carpenter did everything. He built, you know, buildings, and he checked the brick and things like that, you know, so it's like an architect, but he did everything.
So he might even design as he went along. He might design
Absolutely.
As well. Now, did you have a lot of brothers and sisters or other family members living in the house other than your mother and father?
Yeah, I had 2 sisters. My brother was born here, but there's 2 boys, 2 girls, and we lived a good life over there. My father worked hard. He worked hard, but he didn't see the opportunity coming for us, because religion played a big role over there, and we were Christian, you know, in a country that didn't accept Christians very well. So, you know, we didn't move up the ladder or get an opportunity like we do here in the United States. So my father decided, you know, we were gonna maybe get out of there, come to the U.S. He applied in the U.S. His brother lived here. So his brother asked, you know,
where did his brother live exactly? Here in Jacksonville?
Here in Jacksonville.
He had already migrated
He lived in
here.
Jacksonville, Florida.
Okay.
His name was Solomon Nackashi. And once he got all the papers taken care of, he told my father, you know, hey, you can come. So we left Iraq, went to Beirut, and with the intentions of never coming back to Iraq. So we kind of left everything, you know, the house, furniture, everything, just left.
Didn't sell it, but it just was there.
If you know, if we sold it, then everybody would know that you're not, you know, going to come back, and things would get complicated.
Okay.
So, you know, some neighbors, you know, needed some things, so we just kind of let it go. And then we went to Beirut to my father's sister's house, stayed there, and took a ship to travel to the U.S. And it was very educational, actually. But we would have, you know, while we were going to Beirut, we would have stopping points where the military would check. and my father would tell us all to be quiet, you know, so it's kind of a scary situation. So,
what were they really checking? To see if you were perhaps fleeing the country?
I guess so, and checking to see where you're going, why are you going there, and things like that. So my father would tell them, you know, we're going to go over there and visit my sister and things like that. But he didn't tell them that we're going to go to the U.S. So, but when we got to Beirut, that's when we started the process of, you know, going out and on a ship, and we traveled and came here. And my uncle received us here.
And what year did you arrive in the US?
That was in 1963, and
you were 13, you said?
I was 13, yes. And on the way over here, you know, we stopped in different countries, like we stopped in Rome and Italy and other places, you know, as we came over here. The ship, you know, had a bad storm, and in fact, they had us all come and say, you know, put on your life jackets. I mean, it was that serious, and everybody was sick and scared, you know.
Were you in the Atlantic Ocean by this time?
By this
when
time,
this happened?
Can't see anything except water, you know.
Wow,
and
yeah.
So, and you're scared to death, and the ship is going up and down, and you see water going above the ship. So we got through the storm, and, you know, we went into Ellis Island, and I remember this very well. As we were coming into Ellis Island, New York was just lit up, and it was so beautiful. I still see it in my head, and it was a proud moment to get there. And, you know, people that live here just don't understand what they have until, you know, I came from a different country. I love this country. You have so much opportunity. You can say anything you want. You don't have to fear at all. And it's a beautiful country. And we had a lot of opportunities. My father opened up a grocery store, and he was very successful at the grocery store. But then there was a riot that went on, which his store...
What part of town was that?
That was on the east side.
East side? Do you remember where on the east side?
It's 21st and Phoenix. And there
I
was
know exactly where your store was. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And there was a laundromat right next door. But my father was, you know, pretty good over there. He did well. But they didn't give him insurance, you know, over there in that area. So the store was burnt down. It was bombed and burned down. So he decided to relocate. We went to McClinney, Florida.
Oh.
And opened up a grocery store there, but we lived here.
Oh, okay.
My father just traveled back and forth. He said, you know, it's an easy ride. It gives me time to think and meditate, you know, on traveling. So he was going back and forth, but he had a successful business over there in McClinney. My mother, she had cancer and died at the age of 38 here. So, you know, my father had a very difficult time, you know, financially, because everything seems to just keep hitting him, you know. And I remember a friend saying, you know, you have a lot of medical bills, maybe you should just, you know, go bankrupt. And he says, no, I wouldn't do that. He paid all his bills, and he had 4 kids. He put them in private school and got us through. And I'm proud to say that all 4 of us are doing well, you know. And
so your dad raised you?
My dad was there the whole time, you know. He didn't take time to go and party or anything like that. His kids were...
He didn't marry again?
He did marry again.
He did?
Yes, he did marry again. And...
someone he met in Jacksonville?
He actually met her in Iraq.
Okay.
Yeah, and she came here, and they married, and they stayed together until you know, he passed away. He died about 9 years ago. It was very hard for us to lose him. He was our mother and father. But my oldest sister actually acted like the mother, you know, when my mother died, yeah, and she took care of us. She
Does she live in Jacksonville, your older sister?
We all live in Jacksonville. And we all live within a mile of each other. So I'm on this side. My sister lives the farthest, which is DuPont.
Not far.
So that's not far,
No, not far.
within a mile. And my sister and brother live right between us.
So you together every holiday,
We're actually together, and my father started this. Every Sunday, we all meet at a restaurant and be there together. And that's every Sunday, we all text each other saying, where we're going, it's either Panera's or other restaurants.
So what about your family traditions and the cuisine of your country? Do you keep any of those traditions alive, or the choice foods of your youth?
Yeah, we do. We still cook the, Iraqi foods.
Which would be
which would be like tabbouleh, kibbeh, baklava, and we call it baklava. And my sisters and my wife and all, they all make it fresh, so it's really good. And as you can see, we get together every holiday, and we're pretty close. We're very religious, Catholic family.
I was going to ask, yes, I thought so.
It's a Catholic family. And we had a cardinal in our family that lived in Rome, and when we were in Italy, we went and visited him. So he was, very nice.
So were you enrolled at Bishop Kenny when you came here, Bishop Kenny High School?
I went to Assumption.
Okay.
And then I went to Bishop Kenny High School, and they were very good. It's tough to go to school when you don't speak English.
And I was going to ask, were there any English speakers in your family when you came over?
There wasn't.
No.
The only English family, speaking families is my my father's brother and his children, which, they helped us out. But I got in trouble a few times because I didn't understand what they were saying. But what they did was they started us, easy teacher, substitute teacher, taught us English, and,
So in your thought now, you learn through these interviews, and it through other reading and exposure to life, that children pick up languages. The younger, it tends to be easier. But here your father is here.
Yeah.
He is opening a grocery store, and he really had not been taught the English language, and yet he does this successfully.
Yeah, he really worked very hard. And I think about it all the time, thinking, what if I needed to leave? Could I just leave everything, go to a different country that I don't speak English, and raise a whole family? How brave of him to do that, But I'm so glad he did, because of what you know about history now.
Let's talk about you some more, though. You came here at age 13, not speaking English. So begin to reveal that story to us. What was it like the early days or years of schooling? What was it like to make friends, getting established, assimilating, and then we'll eventually get into the business you have yourself today.
Well, when we came to this country, the first week, it was very difficult. Kids were not, some bullies, but, they were good. But I made some good friends that sat with me, taught me everything. But then the first week we were here, a week or two, President Kennedy got assassinated. And the story was, the president was assassinated, and it's all over the news. So we were thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen next? We didn't know. And, we got through it. But I still remember it. It's so sad to see the president dying, at a young age. And me at 13 thinking, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to this country? Things like that. But we, of course, we got through everything. But as I grew up, kids usually always ask me, how is it over there? They started asking me questions about how it was over there. So they were getting educated by me, and I was getting educated by them. So we were educating each other. And I had 4 good friends, and they stayed friends with me. In fact, one of them is a priest here in town, and John Reynolds.
A Catholic priest, I take it, yes.
Yeah. And he and I, went through Assumption and Bishop Kenny together. And but they taught me English more than anybody. Because, no, you shouldn't say that, you should do this. What was hard, it was in the 60s, and you have words like cool, groovy.
Yeah.
Those weren't real words, so I'm looking it up saying, what does cool mean, and I'm going, why would somebody call me cold, things like that. So it was hard because of the slang, all the slang, words.
There was so much music in the 60s. Did you listen to the 60s music?
I actually did. I enjoyed the beat. Mm-hmm. I may not have understood the words at the time, but I enjoyed, how, it sounded. And later, of course, you start understanding the words and all. But the hardest thing for me is to, keep up in class with all the reading and things like that I had to do. And that was hard.
So what did you do? So you went on through Bishop Kenny. Your dad actually got you some lessons in the evening or after school anyway.
After school.
But it seems like you were learning a lot from your friends. Now you eventually would graduate from Bishop Kenny, correct?
I did. I graduated in 1972 from Bishop Kenny. It was a sad time for me to leave because these kids were very close to me, or my friends were very close to me. I went through a lot with them, and graduated. And then I started helping my father at the grocery store. Well, at the grocery store about 2 blocks away, there was a funeral home, and he would call me every once in a while and say, can you help me drive a car or, do something? And I would, and then I asked him if he had a full-time job for me. And he said...
now, is this in McClenny or in Jacksonville? It's in McClenny. Because this is where the family's working, but living in Jacksonville.
Correct. And we would go back and forth. And, I told him, I said, yeah, I can, help you anytime you want. Well, he told me to go to a funeral home in Jacksonville to see if I could get a full-time job. And that was Corey Curlin Funeral Home. And I started working for them. And that was in 1972. I started. I remember May 2nd of 1972.
Good for you.
I started working for them. And I enjoyed one thing that I did, and that's driving back and forth with my father. We had long talks and things. Well, I got the job, and I told my father that, I got this job and I'd like to start working there. He says, absolutely. So on days that I'm off, I would go and help him. And then there was a gentleman, Bill Curlin. He enjoyed playing golf, and he taught me how to play golf. So I started playing golf with him on certain days. And my father was, on weekends I would help my father out at the grocery store. Then he decided to sell the store and open up a gas station here in town, right off of San Jose, on Hendricks actually. It was a Texaco gas station. And he opened it here, and on my days off I would help him at the gas station. And the family always helped, I wasn't the only one, everybody helped each other, so. But, so in 1972 I started working at Corey Curlin and decided to get my funeral director's license. So I went to college and got my license and came back to Jacksonville. And Bill Curlin, who was a good friend and my golfing buddy, hired me back. And then a couple of years later, he decided he wanted to retire, and he asked me if I was interested in, buying the funeral home, and he has a way of transferring everything and all that. So he did it, and I owned the funeral home. Myself and partners, we had the funeral home for, till now, since I would say 77.
Very long time indeed, and it looks like you have a little anniversary coming up of your start day.
I do.
We sit a couple of days before that.
And I told my wife, I said, May 2nd is my favorite day of the year.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden, my son, the second one, I have 4 boys. My second one calls me and he says, Dad, you're going to be a grandfather. And the due date is May 11th. I said, oh, okay. May is my favorite month.
Oh.
So, but yeah.
So let's talk about it. So here you are established in a business starting as early as 1972, and this would be your future to this day in Jacksonville. This well-known funeral home, well-established, and in the meantime, at some point you marry, you have this family, and tell about that.
Okay, I met my wife through, like I told you, Bill Curlin and I were golfers, and we were friends. And Wells Fargo, who was First Union at the time, had a golf tournament. So they were putting a golf tournament together, and he says, well, I want to invite Jerry to come to play with us. And they told him, they said, well, it's just to the owners, not, at that time I wasn't an owner. He says, well, then I'm not going to play unless he plays. All of a sudden they invited me. And my wife was in charge of the golf tournament. She was in marketing, and she was but she was in marketing with First Union.
Your wife at that time?
No, we weren't married.
You weren't. So the woman you would marry.
Yes.
Had you met her at that point?
I haven't met her yet.
Not met her.
So I came to register, and she was there to register
for
us.
First Union.
Yeah.
For the bank.
Yeah, and that's when I met her, and she was driving the golf cart, to make sure everybody's okay and doing well and no problems. And then they had a party after the golf tournament, and that's where I had a chance to talk to her. And she asked me what my last name was, and it was very noisy. And I told her Nackashi, and she thought I said a different name. She said, oh, I think I know some family members like that, which it became not true. So and then I asked her out, and we married. And we had 4 boys.
And was your wife a Jacksonville native?
She was from Birmingham, Alabama, moved to Jacksonville to work for the bank. And she had a house in Mandarin, a condo. And I had a condo in Mandarin. And I used to jog, right by the neighborhood and go back and forth. And so we got connected that way.
And how old were you at the time?
At the time, I was 30.
About 30? So
yeah.
30 when you married, or a little?
I was 31 when I married.
Okay.
Yes. And my father was 31 when he married, too. So there was a little... But I just didn't find anybody until, she came along. And her family are from Lebanon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was born here in the U.S. And we had a lot of common things, so we connected very well. And I knew she was the one for me. So,
So did you start having children right away?
We had our first child about 7 months later. She was pregnant about 7 months later, and then we had our first child, and then my second son was born 14 months apart.
Wow,
So
you're busy people.
Yeah, we were busy. And then we waited up a couple of years, and then we had our third child. And then about a year later, we had our fourth one.
So you have 4 boys very close
boys.
together. Now, how many of your sons live in Jacksonville?
Well, we have 2 that live in Jacksonville. David, who is my oldest, he's an artist in Jacksonville. And, you know, he has some murals and all around Jacksonville. Yeah, so.
Does he create his art under the name David Nackashi?
He'll sign it D Nackashi and spell it out Nackashi. Yeah.
So he's a he paints.
Yeah.
And
he does that, and he loves it. And he bought him a house in the Springfield area, and he's remodeling it and fixing it all up.
So an older home.
An older home that he just loves.
Sounds like it might be a historic home.
It is a historic home.
So that's your oldest son who's here,
oldest.
and then your second son is?
My second son, he's the one that's married, and he's going to have a child in May. He lived, he went to school in Lewisburg, West Virginia, and he's a DO. And right now he's in Michigan, Jackson, Michigan, Ford Hospital over there. And he is studying and becoming a surgeon. And he's loving what he does. His wife is in pediatrics. She's, unfortunately, they had to be separated for a few years because she's just finishing her program. And now in May, about close to the middle of May, she's moving to Michigan and they'll be together. So,
in nice cold weather. So what part of Michigan did you say?
It was Jackson, Michigan.
Jackson, Michigan. And
yes.
It's cold everywhere in Michigan compared to here, but beautiful, I know. And so they're in Michigan, and of course they maybe have not alighted in their final destination since they're both in programs or finishing programs.
Yeah, they are.
And does he talk about coming back to Jacksonville?
I asked him, and he said, I'm not sure yet. So I'm hoping he does. But he was talking about maybe going into, maybe the Carolinas, one of the Carolinas. Because his wife's family is from Atlanta. And but hopefully he'll come back here.
What about the third son?
And the third son is Matthew. And he works at UF Health. He worked in the emergency room for the last 4 years, and he worked nights. And he is in the emergency room doing IVs and things like that. But he just got promoted to where he doesn't have to work at nights, but he's going to work day shifts. And I think he's going to be like assisting or teaching how to do.
So he got a degree in
public health.
Public health.
Yes.
So that's his degree.
That's who. Now he gave us a scare because one day when he was working at night, and it was Christmas Eve, and he's coming back, and he fell asleep at the wheel and hit the wall at Epping Forest, which was very a bad accident, but he wasn't hurt, thank God. And
how long ago was that?
That was
Christmas Eve.
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah. And
I think that was an accident I heard about, Jerry. Goodness.
It may be. And the policeman came out and asked him. He says, "Have you been drinking and all?" And he says, "No." So when rescue came out, I told him, I said, "You go ahead and take his blood work if you want. I know he won't do that." And then the second policeman came. He goes, "Oh, you were working in the emergency room." And he said, "Yeah, how did you know?" He says, "You had my daughter in there."
Oh.
So, so it worked out. And then my third one is in Nova University in Miami, or Hollywood, Florida. And he's studying to be a psychologist, and he's getting his doctorate there. So, very proud of the boys. They work hard.
It sounds as though they have, and it sounds as though, did you send all of them to private school?
Yeah, they all went through San Jose Catholic Church school, and then they went to Bishop Kenny.
And then they college,
and then college,
and some on and on with other degrees. So I'm sure you are very proud.
Yeah, while they were going to San Jose, my wife worked at San Jose. And then once they started going to Bishop Kenny, my wife started working at Bishop Kenny. And my wife's going to be retiring soon from Bishop Kenny. Yeah, so.
Well, and she's still at Bishop Kenny.
Yeah.
And you had a very busy household, I take it.
Oh, yeah. And our yard back there, we had a backyard that's real small, but I bought the yard right behind us, so I can put a pool, and the 4 boys would play football out there, and I loved it. You can just sit and watch them and all.
That was just genius. I didn't realize that. I noticed you had a lovely big backyard.
Yeah.
But so the lot on the next street happened to become available. And
yeah, it's actually the house on San Jose. They had a long backyard.
Oh, I see.
So I went to him and asked him if he wanted to sell it.
Sell some off,
and, he said no. And then all of a sudden one day he came, he says, yeah, I think I want to sell it. So I bought the property from him, and we put in a pool, and the boys' friends used to come here. And on our block, at the end of the street, there's a house, I don't know who owns it, but it was a house on the end of the block. There was a full court basketball in their backyard. So the boys would go there all the time, and the gentleman over there, all of a sudden, he put lights there for the boys to play, in case it gets dark on them.
And this, of course, this street is well established in the San Jose area. I mean, it's been here such a long time. How long have you lived in this same home?
We have been here about 40, maybe 35 years.
35 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the home all your children
It'd be, over 30 years, not quite 35, because we bought it when my second son was born here, so it's about 31 years, that we've been here.
So when you look, and when did you become an American citizen? At some point, yes.
Yeah, we were here just a few years, and then I became an American citizen, and
how did that work? Was it pretty automatic because your parents done? Well, your father done this already.
Yes. I went to downtown, and they had a group of people to swear in, and I went there and I said, okay, I guess this is nothing, but you just put your hand up and do this. But no, you have to really learn a lot of history about the United States, and they test you, and then you get sworn in. And really, it didn't affect me until they said, now you're an American citizen. And boy, it puts shivers in you and say, gosh, that's great. In fact, I still feel good about it.
How old were you at the time?
I was probably about 16. 15 or 16.
And so do you remember studying for the exam?
Oh, yeah,
for your
I do.
Citizenship exam?
I did. They give you a packet and you learn some things, ask you, who's the first president. I mean, it's not really very, very difficult. It was, some things that you need to know, just small things. It wasn't very hard. Yeah.
Well, so when you look back on your life today, is there anything that you miss about your home country? Relatives you've left behind, other things? Have you visited your Iraq since you've been gone?
I have not.
Okay.
My brother that was born here, he went back and visited with my father and came back. He just wanted to see where we came from. And once we came back, that's when 9/11, once he came back, that's when 9/11 happened. So I'm so glad he was back in this country. But I'm very proud of my heritage, And when 9/11 happened, and people knew that I was Iraqi, it was hard because, they thought everybody over there is, not a good person, I guess. But, but once they meet you and start talking to you, I said, well, this is the way to tell them that not everybody's, we're normal people,
And it's interesting you say that, and because this project is largely about showing that very piece of the story, normal people, the life, the story, and even though the stories of everybody we've interviewed, the stories are diverse, but the stories are very much alike as well. It's so interesting to hear. Well, and let's talk about, and by the way, do you have many relatives left in Iraq? Do you know?
I have an aunt that is in a nursing home over there. She's not going to be going anywhere. She's too old to move. But most of them have already left, And, being Christian in that area is not a good thing to be. There's less than 2% Christians in that area.
We've been fortunate to hear already what the United States has meant to you and your family. Is there anything you'd like to add to that at all?
I would love for people to understand what they have here, how proud they should be of this country. I mean, coming here and having the freedom that you have, you just don't know what you have here. I would love for them to feel what it feels like to be free.
And how did your father feel about his initial struggle in this country to make it? Was it a positive for him, negative, combination? And you were a part of that struggle. You've described that.
Yeah, it was a struggle, but I think he accepted it. Everything that happened, it was okay because he knew that the future would be better. And he worked hard. He worked, day and night. He had to make arrangements to get us to school, and go to work and things like that. It was a struggle, but if you asked him again if he'd do it again, he would tell you yes.
Now, you've lived in Jacksonville since your arrival, a total of about how many years?
I'm
not asking your age, but I'm almost.
I'm 63 and I was 13, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've lived in Jacksonville many years. Before we end this, I'd like you to talk just a little bit about your additional memories of childhood, what the city was like, what you do and don't remember of the city that may have changed a lot.
In Jacksonville?
Yes, in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this whole area, the San Jose area and Mandarin area, where it was all woods. Nothing was there. And we lived down the street, Rosewood, in the San Marco area. And as a kid, there was a little 5 and dime store I used to walk to.
Peterson's, I bet.
Peterson's.
I think that's what
it was, yeah. And Hendricks Elementary was just down the street. Summer school, I would go there to study, the English language too. I would walk everywhere or ride a bicycle. It wasn't, none of this was out here. And then all of a sudden it started growing. And in Mandarin, just a few years back, about 20 years ago, it wasn't built up. No, maybe longer than that. 25 years. Mandarin started really growing where traffic is opening up.
So what was your dad's route to McClenny? Was I-10 there initially when he needed to get there?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
He would go over the Forlorn Bridge and then I-10 and go out to McClenny. And it was called Vernon's Grocery in McClenny. And but he loved Jacksonville. He loved where he lived, in that San Marco area.
Did he remain in San Marco?
He did, until he passed away.
So he lived there until his death. In the very, one of his initial homes, or
The initial home?
How were you able to get that home when you first came here? Did you live with relatives when you first arrived?
We lived with relatives. We lived with his brother. And then he got a loan. And then from that, he bought the house. And he and his brother were partners in the store. And then his brother decided to retire. And then he had the store by himself.
And I have one more question about those early years. Do you recall the name of the grocery store that your dad initially ran when he first in Springfield?
And yeah, it was called 21st Street Grocery Store.
Okay.
21st Street Grocery. Yeah.
Because this has been a real surprise interview for me. I think our dads knew each other, Jerry.
Really?
I do. So it's been very sweet for me to hear your story unfold.
Wow.
Which means that I probably saw you down in a little boy playing in the area when you came.
Wow.
Yeah, likely. By this time I would, and I walked up and down those streets often too.
Where?
It's Springfield.
In Springfield.
But you were over
Yeah.
east, very east.
Yes, we're
Springfield.
very east, yeah.
Yes. Well, it has been such a delight to interview you.
Oh.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to the interview at all?
No, I don't really. I'm very happy here. I'm happy with my life. The hardest thing that happened to me was when my mother died. And the happiest day of my life was when my kids were born. So those are my things.
Well, just for a minute, because I don't want to overlook that. You were here when your mother died. So you were living in that home in San Marco by that time, correct?
Right.
And she was at a particular hospital. And
they had found breast cancer.
Okay.
And they didn't know much about cancer back then. She died in 1968. She went to Baptist Hospital.
Okay.
That's where her doctors were. Yeah.
Yes. Because you were very near there too, physically at home.
The thing that back then they wouldn't let kids in the hospital, so I couldn't go in the hospital to see her. So I would see her through the window and wave, and that's it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing all your memories with us, and thank you for embracing Jacksonville, Florida as your home.
I love Jacksonville. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a lovely interview.